Hey guys, welcome to the You Can Powerlift podcast. This is episode 2, Training Environment and Travel, with your hosts Dylan Johnson and Nick Chichi for Level Up Training Systems. All right, Nick, why don't you start us off?
So let me say that I think powerlifting can be done anywhere. The bare minimum equipment is a bar, plates, you don't
Yep.
even need a belt, you don't need wrist wraps, you just need a squat rack, bench press, bar, plates. So I think that's the beautiful thing about the sport, and I
Hmm.
think that's what, allows me to draw people into the sport as a coach. Maybe working at a commercial gym and,
Yep.
saying, "Hey, we're doing this already. Um, why don't we try to, work on your squat, bench, and deadlift?"
Oh,
So,
100%. I mean, most commercial gyms come equipped standard with you'll have a squat rack, you'll have your bench press. It's not like with other sports, like you have strongman. One thing that they have is that they'll do the Atlas stones and the back throws, and you don't have that at a lot of gyms. If you want to work on your log press, like you need to find a gym that can support that kind of sport. Whereas powerlifting, I found that it's not really all that hard to stay on program when I travel. Even when I don't have like a powerlifting gym nearby, I can go to something like an LA Fitness or an Anytime Fitness, and you'll find that they have just about everything you need. You won't even need your equipment for the most part unless you're like seriously about to go to a competition most times.
yeah, I totally agree. Um, we just went down to Texas, why don't we talk about, how the travel was, how the training was down there for you?
Yeah, that was uh amazing time. I went to El Paso, Texas, on personal travel, and while I was there, I came across a really good gym. I believe it was called Renegade Fitness. I could be wrong though. And this was probably one of the best gyms I'd ever been to, and it was just a straight up commercial gym. Now they didn't have, for the most part, a big emphasis on powerlifting. It was more of a bodybuilding gym, but they had a back area with a combo rack and kilo plates. Um, but I mean, up front, they had everything I needed. They had the bench press, they had the squat rack, they had accessory lift areas, dumbbells that went up to 200 pounds. For people who are very serious about dumbbell bench press. But
It's
right
dope.
up front, they actually did have a something like a miniature vitamin shop, like straight up. They had stuff that I couldn't even find in my local area.
Yeah, the gym looked great. It looked like a big environment, a lot of space. I think that's really awesome to have a gym that's like, not like clustered all together. You can move around a little bit. You don't have to worry about tripping over things. I think
Yep.
that's huge. How did you feel while traveling with the training? Did your body feel good? Did you feel sharp? Did it feel a little bit different being in a, different location?
I think that you just brought up something that's very important, and that is planning our travel. Because when you're going to travel, you need to factor in your training. Um, I've made the mistake before of doing something like an overnight trip where you're on the plane, you're leaving and it's 10 o'clock at night, and then when you arrive, it's about 4 in the morning, and then when you finally get to your hotel, it's about 8 a.m., and you only slept. The plan was, okay, I'm going to sleep on the plane, but I only got like 2 or so hours of pretty bad sleep.
Yeah, it's
And
tough.
then you have to sleep all day and then try to go training in the evening. Everything gets thrown out of whack. So best thing you can do is, if you're on travel, um, here's two things you can do. One is you want to travel before you need to train. So you can travel on a Sunday if you're going to train on Monday. Get that out of the way. Go ahead and do your travel, do your sleep, eat, drink, rest, and then the next day get ready for training. The other thing you can do is, if you're in a really big of a crunch that you need to get there at a certain time and you need to train the same day, best thing you can do is do really early morning. It's gonna suck, but you really should get up at like 2 a.m., be at the airport by 3 or 4 or 5, right? And then try to make sure that when you land, you have enough time to cool your jets for a little bit, get some food, and then be ready to train maybe somewhere into the evening. And if you do that, you're gonna have a lot more energy. The key is planning. You need to sleep before you go and do this. Like if you're going to get up at 2 a.m., best thing you can do is try to go to bed at like 6 or 7. Like eat your breakfast around, sorry, not your breakfast, eat your dinner around like 4 or 5. Try to be in bed by 6 or 7. Wake up at 2. And it's going to be hard to fall asleep like that. Which is why one thing I would recommend is that if you can, if you're not lactose intolerant, try to drink a glass of milk. If you have like a sleep supplement, something that can help knock you out, you can take that. But you do need to get your sleep in because it'll be a long day.
Yeah, you see a lot of people go with competition and a little bit of travel kind of knocks them out and the numbers that they're
Hmm.
hitting in training or in a local comp just aren't there. So I think that's a good important piece of advice. Try to get your feet wet, try to get acclimated to the area, and you know uh feel as right as you can. Even when I
Oh,
travel to like a different gym, locally, just the environment can throw me off a little bit. I'm not around the same people. I'm looking for a spot or something like that,
yep.
and that can throw you off. I couldn't imagine like traveling and competing, and it's definitely a huge emphasis where a lot of people. I think if they're not prepared, they're gonna be you know in for a surprise.
Oh, they definitely are. I would say the one thing that is important to remember that when you're going on travel, especially if it's for a meet, if you are in a heavy block of training where you're trying to do a personal record, or let's say you're going for a competition,
Hmm.
you need to plan out how long you're going to be there before you make your attempt, and it's going to be depending on how long your flight is. Like if you're going to be going in and you're going to be doing your competition, you don't want to show up the day before because you're just going to be wiped. And at the same time, it's kind of a bad idea to show up a week early because you're going to have nothing to do, and it's also a lot of money. You have to factor in the budget of this.
Yep.
When we're on travel, it's not like you have your pantry nearby that you can zip into. Anything that you need to eat, you're probably gonna be going out to eat every night. You're like unless you're at an Airbnb and you do some serious planning where you go out to a grocery store and buy groceries and cook for yourself every night. You're gonna have to factor in the budget of your travel. So what I would plan to do is, and I've done this before when I've done travel. I've done travel to the World Cup, the World Bench Press World Cup in the UK back in 2024. I believe that. When was that? Was that September or August?
Uh,
Might have been December.
I think it was September,
September.
if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I wanted to talk about that because you know the environment's different in Europe than it is in the U.S. Food's different, all that. So yeah, why don't you touch on that? I think that's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, one thing I found that was that it was a lot easier to keep my weight down when I got to the UK, because when I got to the UK, I found that a lot of the food that they have there, they didn't have the same additives that are in our food in the US. So it was actually really easy, and the portion sizes were a lot smaller, which at first I'm like, oh my gosh, everything's so small. I'm such a big guy. This is crazy. But then I thought, well, no, no, no. I need to make weight. This is actually really good. So
Hmm.
what I did was I planned smaller portions, and I was able to make weight to where I believe I was. What did I weigh in? Like 271.
You were light. I remember
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. And my resting weight before I went over to the UK was I was weighing like 279 in the morning, And this is for the 125 kilo weight class, and the that weight class you have to be under 275. So it definitely made a big difference. Being able to tap into the food over there, I noticed that they didn't have a lot of sodium
Yeah.
compared to the food over here. So it was a big opportunity, which I think we will probably learn more about this when it comes to my competition coming up, where I'm going to the UK, not the UK, but Korea in
Yeah, it's gonna
December
be
this year.
exciting, man.
Yeah, because I believe that in Korea, the food is going to probably be a little bit more carby, a little bit more high sodium. So a good strategy will probably be to go into Korea light rather than going in heavy, just to make sure I don't end up having trouble making weight.
Yeah, you don't wanna go all the way over there just to, miss weight. I think that's
Yeah,
a good
no
strategy.
good. Hmm.
We have a really good recomp protocol too, works every time.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, um,
yeah. There's always the
traveling,
Jolly Ranchers.
yeah, traveling, whether it be training or competition can definitely be interesting. Let's talk about like training at the gym, you know, with a group and maybe like an iron sharpens iron type of thing, being around other strong, focused, you know, technically sound lifters, you know,
Of course. Yeah, 100%. In my lifting career, I've always found that being surrounded by other people, you think about it like a campfire. If you had a lone log sitting in the middle and it's burning brightly, eventually that log's going to start smoldering down and it's going to turn to embers. And then you're not going to be able to keep that heat going. In order to build a real roaring fire, what you need to do is you need to stack together. You take like-minded people, you bring them together, and you get them feeding off of each other's energy. And then that's how you build a roaring fire, so to speak, inside of yourself to stay committed and stay focused with your training and with your fitness goals. Just having that energy, having people around you that are competitive with you, especially the best thing I've found is when there's somebody around you who you are competitive with because they are better than you,
right.
or because maybe you're better than them, but they're starting to catch up to you. That they'll light a fire under your butt, so to speak, and that can really push you. If you have this competitive edge that you want to beat somebody that is around you, it can really help drive your ability to train harder. There's a mental aspect. There's also a chemical component to this too. Research has shown that when competitive people are around each other, their testosterone levels will go up because they want to beat each other. They want to grow more muscle. They want to be stronger. They want to become the alpha, so to speak, and beat the other competitor. So surrounding yourself with like-minded, strong, focused people is a great way to grow as a lifter, and to advance your goals in
Yeah, I've
power.
always enjoyed training with people who are stronger than me. I think I can learn something from them. Just bigger, stronger people. I've always enjoyed that, and
Yeah.
it just you know pushes me. If they could do it, I can do it, type of thing. But
Yep.
it's also very impressive. I also know that they got my back just in case something were to happen. Like
Yeah.
if I miss a squat or I miss a bench. You also don't want to, you know, that being said, you don't want to miss a lift in front of the biggest, strongest guy in the gym, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that can be huge. There's also the ego aspect that has
Yeah.
to be talked about there. That if one thing that helps a lot is when you realize that you're not the biggest fish. You
Right.
know, it's a big fish in a small pond type situation when you'll feel like you're pretty strong, and that can lead you to let off the gas a little bit. But then if you have somebody around you that's better than you, stronger than you, and they're more focused than you, it can really help you to want to drive, because what you have in front of you is a new mountain, is a new summit to reach,
For sure.
a new threshold for your training.
Yeah, I think the group of guys that we have, and women,
Yep.
they're just awesome. We've been together for a long time, a good group core of us, and we're all pretty tight. We get to have a good time. But when it comes down to it, like everybody knows what they're doing. So if you're gonna squat, 600, you're gonna bench 500, you know, we're gonna be safe.
Oh yeah.
You got more than enough people there. Somebody's driving the hype train. Everything's good. Where the energy's high, and I think it's really, really undervalued, really underrated.
Hmm. Oh, definitely. Um, yeah, a big thing that can really set apart your training here is having good spotters around.
Hmm.
If you're in a commercial gym and not, not dissing on people who are beginners, but if you're going into a commercial gym and you need good spotters and you're going for like a 500-pound bench press or you're going for 600, 700 pounds on your squat, um, I don't think you're going to be able to go in with confidence when you're surrounded by novices who aren't sure about whether or not they're going to be able to help you if something goes wrong. Being surrounded by like minded, strong people who have been doing this with you, it can give you the confidence to push harder because, if you go to failure, they got me. I'm not going to get crushed.
Right.
Whereas if you're in any other gym, I mean, and then your spotter doesn't know what they're doing, and they're scared to spot you because they're afraid that something could happen to you. That's going to sap your confidence. You're not going to be able to try to push to hit a new PR with the same level of confidence or commitment if you know that you may not be okay.
It's a tough feeling being in that situation. We've both been there. I work at a commercial gym. You train there quite often, and
Yep.
it could be tough. But I think on the day you have to just take what's there.
Yep.
Like we said at the beginning of the podcast today, powerlifting is for everybody, and you can do it anywhere. That's the great thing about it. But definitely having like a good group of people, you could train at a commercial gym. You could train at a powerlifting gym. Um, I think the main benefit with the powerlifting gym is the equipment. Like we were talking about when you were traveling down to Texas, how the gym was outfitted with, calibrated plates,
Yep.
200-pound dumbbells, that type of thing. Where a
Shit.
commercial gym might be a little tougher. You got an iron grip bar or something, rinky dink bench press, squat rack that's kind of crooked. Uh, it can make it harder.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
definitely makes it harder. It doesn't make it funner. It makes it harder.
Well,
Going back into a good powerlifting gym where the calibrated plates just move better, more supported bench press goes huge for somebody who's benching, 500 pounds. That's, upwards of 270 pounds.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, the worst part is when you go to a gym that has a regular bench rack, and when you go to rack the bar ends up being the same height as the pins, so you hit the pins on the way in. No,
Yep.
that's never any good. I'm sure you're used to that.
Yeah, that
With
happens every session. Yeah, every session, I'm just like, man, I hate bench press
yeah.
now.
This the what is it? The Renegade, I believe it was called. The one I went to in Texas. They had a really good bench rack. The combo rack. I believe they had an Alico platform. Back in the back room, but out on the main floor, they had a little bit of a mixed bag when it came to the bench presses. One of them was actually pretty not good. It
Mm,
actually had a sloping in the pins. I don't know why, but the pins that the little hooks to catch the bar, they sloped outwards as you went down. So on the way up, you know how I have my curve technique where
mhm.
I bring it down to, at the very bottom of my sternum and then I push it up at an angle. I kept hitting it. I kept hitting the middle pin because it was sticking out before I could get to the top. So I actually had to, I believe I was at like 365. I had to strip the bar off of that rack and take it over to another bench press that didn't have the sloping pins just so I could avoid smacking it.
and that costs energy and time. Um, some of the sessions for powerlifting can be quite long. You know, you don't need to run into that where
Yeah.
you have to spend, 5, 10 minutes unracking the bar, setting it back up. Um, for me, I'm sometimes limited on time,
Yep.
so it's nice since I work at a commercial gym that I train there. I don't have to travel, but when I'm there, I just have to lower my expectations a little bit and just play it smart. Because I know that the guy over there in the corner's probably never seen, that much weight on a squat rack. He can't really spot me.
Yep.
So I just gotta lower my expectations and take what's there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's never a problem with that, especially if you're in the building phase of your program. Sometimes all you need to do is just take the lower end of your RPE. You can still get good training even if you're at a inadequate gym. The best rule of thumb would be if you are hitting a weight that requires spotters, but you're not confident that the spotters are going to be able to help you, just take the lower end of what's there.
Right.
Uh, in a way that you know that when you hit the bottom, you're going to be able to come back up to the top,
Hmm.
you know? And then, but best thing you can do when you're on travel is make sure you record your lifts for your coach. They need to see what you're doing. They need to see how your lifts are going. And it can also be a good thing in another way too, is that the camera can also help give your coach a view of what the gym is like, which can actually help in the future if maybe that gym ends up becoming a center for a powerlifting competition. If your coach like wants to think about, okay, maybe we should go to this gym for a meet. Well,
Hmm.
if they see the inside of the gym and it looks, pretty good, then you go, okay, well, maybe we could do the meet there. But if it's not looking like the best kind of gym, you can use that in your planning for if I'm going to go to a competition that's at one gym versus another gym.
And maybe the gym's like a little bit more compact, don't have space, or it just has one bathroom or something like that.
Yep.
The warm up area is kind of small, that type of deal. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That can also be a good thing for coaches too. If you have a whole bunch of lifters on your team, and they're going to different gyms in your local area, or they're going out of state, you can just ask them. Ask them like, what about this gym that they went to? Did they have pound plates or kilo plates? Uh, what were the bathrooms like? Did it seem cramped? Was it hot in there? Did they have running air conditioning? Because that type of scouting that you can get there from your lifters can play a huge role in your planning for whether or not you're going to hold a meet at a certain gym, but also just for meets in general. Where do you want to go for a meet? Where do you want to send your lifters to go compete?
Yeah, and you bring up a good point with the air conditioning and being summertime now.
Mhm.
That's definitely a pro about the commercial gym. They usually have air conditioning where
Yep.
powerlifting gyms might not. It's hard to do a set of seven at like a 7, 8 RPE on squat when it's 100 degrees outside and you got no air conditioning. Uh,
Oh yeah. Do you
then
remember that?
we just go to the old LA Fitness and train there.
Do you remember the first meet I believe I went to go see you compete at?
Oh, brother.
Yeah, the
God.
first that was back in 2023, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah, or was it 22?
I think it was 2023, July 2023. No, 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 it was 2022. Yeah,
Yeah, it
2022,
was 2022 because Festivus was in late fall of 2022.
the end of the year.
Yeah, I remember, not only did they not have air conditioning, the apparently the gym was so cramped and so small, they did the competition outside and in the sun, and I don't know why they did it, but, they covered the audience in a big tarp, which was great. Good job, guys, and they covered the platform with the tarp. They had fans blowing, it was cool under the tarp. Good. Good job. But then in the staging area where you're lining up to go onto the platform to go compete, it was completely uncovered with the blistering sun going down on you and no fan. And so the lifters that are lining up to go compete, they're getting cooked, and then when they go out onto the platform to go lift, they're already fatigued from the heat, and then when we saw lots of people missing their lifts.
Oh,
Did
brother,
like
I missed, in training, I took a lift for 3 reps, and I knew I was smoked. I was cooking like bacon out in the sun that day, and, on my 3rd attempt, I took that same lift that I hit for 3 in training, and I missed it for 1 on my 3rd attempt, and I just got crushed. It was it was a tough day for me. I felt like I got stronger going into bench, which was weird, but then at the end of the day on deadlift, I got smoked again.
if I had
That was a tough experience, but it's all good. You live, you learn.
if I had to guess, I'd probably say that the reason why your bench got better was because that amount of heat improved a lot of blood flow through your upper body, which really probably helped you get a little bit more out of your bench press. Because one problem that we have on the bench press is your arms, your chest, and your back, right? Those are going to be smaller muscle groups compared to what's in your legs.
Mm.
So, when you're doing squats and deadlifts, you can take like 4 or 5 minutes between attempts, and you'll keep the heat, so to speak. But when you're going into bench press, you kind of have to stay. You have to keep the fire going, because with the smaller muscles, that is the upper body, you can lose that heat quicker. And so in your case, you were able to keep that heat because you couldn't get away from it.
Oh, man. Your boy was like 30 pounds overweight too at the time, and I looked like a human thumb. I remember I had the shaved head, and I was super bloated that day. It was
Yeah, yeah.
the
You
squats got me.
were,
I don't know.
what was it? You were looking like the thumb men from Spy Kids.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I was looking pretty suave out there in the singlet, cooking in 100-degree heat. Yeah, but
Yeah.
signed up for a new comp. August 3rd, Odyssey Barbell. Gonna make my debut at 75 kg.
Yep. There you go.
Yeah. So, since that time in the summer 2022, dropped about 50 pounds.
Now, did you say it was July or August?
The upcoming meet is going to be August 3rd.
August 3rd. And then you're going to regionals, correct?
Yep, we got to compete at regionals 75
Yeah.
with the team, like we talked about with the good training community and hopefully get some good training all together leading up into that comp.
Yeah, let's talk about when it comes to a competition. So for example, we have regionals coming up. What's a good strategy to in order to make sure that when we recomp as far as water and salt and pre-workout, and then you have Pedialyte. How do we avoid upset stomach and the disastrous side effects that come from trying to take all those supplements right at once as soon as you finish your weigh-ins about an hour before the platform? We do see in competitions, especially at regionals, a lot of intestinal issues, so to speak, right after weigh-ins from people pounding their pre-workout, pounding the Pedialyte, and then they experience what we talked about.
So, yeah, in powerlifting, we have a 2-hour weigh-in. So that means we weigh in and then we have a 2-hour window where the lifts will start. So my biggest strategy is using some sort of sodium solution. It could be a Gatorade, it could be a Pedialyte. With a sodium supplement, it could be a liquid IV, it could be a Tri-Roll, anything of the like. And as soon as you get off the scale, chug that down, right? And from there, we're going to drink water. You
Hmm.
know, uh, Going into squat, I like to drink about a half a gallon of water.
Yep.
And then from there, you're gonna eat your carbs. So the sodium supplement mixed with the Gatorade and all the water can kind of make you a little bit queasy, your stomach unsettled. But I find that the carbs will settle the stomach. So
That's
the
good.
carbs definitely will settle the stomach. So we try to get all that work done, recomp, rehydrate. The carbs are gonna help hold on to water. So by the time, an hour in after weigh-in, you should be about 4 or 5 pounds heavier,
Yeah.
maybe even 6 to 8 pounds heavier, depending on the person. So that's the basic strategy in a nutshell. But you want to give yourself plenty of time, to maybe use the bathroom or something like that. Like I said, there's a 2-hour window, so I like to get all that done within an hour. So then you got to chill, maybe sit down, digest, let the
Yep.
stomach settle, and then you got about half an hour for your warm ups.
And then, what I would say to do also is, once you've gotten over the hump, so to speak, once you
Hmm.
get over that 1 hour mark, the best thing you can do is, if you're gonna take your pre-workout, you want to avoid tipping the scale the other way into full upset, because if you try to chug your pre-workout, if you're too quick with it, you're gonna be not doing so good, so to speak. Best thing you can do at that point is to try to sip it. And what you want to do is focus on drinking your clear water and sipping the pre-workout in very small amounts and letting it settle.
Hmm.
You want to be continuing to hydrate with regular water, and then as you go, you'll take your pre-workout and take small sips, you know,
Yeah,
in increments over time, just to let everything settle. Because I mean, if you go too fast, you might end up spending your entire prep period in the restroom, instead of warming up, which can
be
affect
fun.
your performance on the platform.
What I usually do is I've learned over time that you want to do it at the competition the exact same way that you do it in training. So what I'll do is I'll try to practice this recomp protocol in training often, and you get used to it, and it's not as big of a surprise. So I'll recomp. You take this tri-oral supplement, the sodium supplement, whatever it is, quite frequently. I'll give myself 2 hours, and almost simulate a meet day experience.
That's actually a really interesting idea. I've never thought of doing that.
Yeah, it works really. I find it works the best, so you're not so surprised because if you never really taken a tri-oral supplement and a Pedialyte together and try to drink, it could be tough. It could be quite interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What would you say would be a good strategy for somebody that might have like a sodium intolerance? Like, let's say they have maybe some mild form of high blood pressure. Maybe their doctor told them to watch their sodium. What would you tell that kind of lifter to do in order to prep for the platform?
Definitely have carbs and water.
Carbs and
Um, Carbs and water. So like my favorite carb for recomping is rice cakes and bananas. I'll use like a Kaiser roll too or a bagel, but carbs and water, and
yep,
probably wouldn't go as extreme with the sodium, but you definitely need it. So maybe just like a Gatorade.
yep. Yeah, in
Yeah.
that case, a Gatorade can provide plenty of salt. You wouldn't need more than that if you're somebody that has high blood pressure or maybe some form of sodium incontinence. Um, another strategy that it doesn't get talked about nearly enough is, when it comes to the prep of, like you were talking about, buying the what do you call them, you had the rice cakes and the
Hmm.
bananas. Um, what's some other types of carby items that you would buy? I see a lot of people going for candy, but in my case, I've always found that whenever I would try to indulge in candy, in order to try to get carbs in, man, it would mess my stomach up for something fierce. So it got to the point where I just started to cut that out entirely and just go straight with the rice cakes and bananas. But if you
Hmm.
had any other suggestions, maybe white
Um,
rice.
yep, white rice is great. Bananas are great. Anything that's going to be easy to digest. I would stay away from brown rice, but you could do like, I really like to do like fried rice,
Yep.
like pork fried rice is good because you got a little bit of protein in there, so it'll help keep you full throughout the meat. Cereal's good for
Mhm.
carbs.
Yeah.
Very easy to digest. You want to just stay away from fibers and
And fats.
heavy fats
Yeah.
and heavy
Proteins.
protein. Peanut butter jelly sandwiches aren't bad. Like I said, peanut butter jelly. You got the peanut butter in there is a little bit of fat, but not too bad. But cereal, bananas, rice cakes,
Yep.
bagels, it's pretty minimal. Like as far as like there's not a lot of options that I would choose from. Those are the ones that I've used
Yeah.
that are tried and true, and I don't really need to get away from those because they work. Cereal
Yeah.
is pretty good though. I
It
don't
can
do
be
the
a
candy either.
Yeah, it can be a little bit of a trap sometimes because what you'll end up going and finding an item that you think is good, and then, well, it turns out it's loaded with fats, which are slow digesting and can be harder on your stomach. So, for example, Rice Krispies, that's one thing I see a lot of people doing at meets, and usually with, not good effect. That you're going to be eating this really what you would think would be a fast digesting carb actually turns out to be a really slow digesting item because they use fat in order to hold together all of the rice crisps. So that can be harder on your stomach.
Yeah.
Best thing I'd say the best strategy would honestly be just to stick with the real thing, even though it's going to be bland, plain. You may not like it as much. Eating bread, eating grains of rice. Maybe something like a white rice or a pasta. You just want to stay away from fats and proteins, especially. But also sometimes when you go with these processed food items, they can also come with their own unpleasant side effects.
Hmm.
Maybe they'll have too much sugar. Maybe they'll have too much in the form of like preservatives or fillers, things that can also upset your stomach. And when you're taking something like a Pedialyte and then you're taking Trioral, you're also mixing in pre-workout and you're chugging a lot of water, you're already going to be on the razor's edge of what your stomach can handle. So I would say the best strategy would be to stick with the real deal food compared to these processed food items because if it tips the wrong way, you could end up throwing up.
Yeah, and for like a newer lifter, we definitely don't want that. There's no worse experience than like going to your first competition and getting sick. So I would say I would have a good conversation as a coach and say, what do you usually do? Let's going back to that, like what do we do in training? That's exactly what we're doing on the comp. Maybe just a Gatorade. Make sure you have plenty of water and make sure you have something to eat that's easy to digest. Bring some bananas, bring a bagel. That's it.
Yep. Yep. That's
More
all you.
advanced people, that's a little different, but on your first comp, we'll take, steps before we start running.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, you just take what you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right, brother. I think we covered a lot today.
Yeah, I think we did. We yeah.
Hey, yeah, man. It's always good talking to you. So I want to keep this going, and we'll plan for the next one soon.
All right.